What's up, everybody? So I've spent the past few days with the Google Pixel 6 and 6 Pro. I actually have a 6 Pro unit here that I'm going to unbox, show you guys everything, even though most of you probably already seen what it looks like from all the other reviewers out there. But this is more of a real life kind of scenario when it comes to the review. So I'm going to go ahead and get into it. And I'm going to go over some things that some of the other people that have tested it out really haven't gone over. So anyway, box, Pixel 6 Pro, and it's a lot thinner than the boxes prior, and everybody already probably knows why. It's because it does not have the standard accessories like the charging block and whatnot. It just has a USB-C cable. That's going to be it. So basically, it's sealed off by these two tabs right here, and you can just either use your fingernail or whatever it may be and just rip them up. I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. And once we get in here, I'll show you all the Pixel 6 up close, and you can kind of get an idea as to what's in the box. And then also we're going to go over some things like haptic feedback. We're going to go over the cameras. And again, I've tested the cameras out on both the Pixel 6 Pro as well as the Pixel 6. And there are some key differences. Obviously, there are more than just differences with the camera. But so here is the Pixel 6 Pro after you open the box. There's a tab to pull up. And there's the screen protector. There you go. And this is what's inside the box. So I'm going to focus on this just for a second. So again, you've got your USB Type-C cable. You've got your USB adapter to Type-C adapter. And then your pamphlet. Underneath of the pamphlet, you're going to have basically just your SIM card ejector. And that's going to be pretty much it. So it's very, very basic. Oops. No, now that fell out, I can show you. So there you go. SIM card removal tool. So anyway, I've tested out, again, the Pixel 6 as well as the Pixel 6 Pro, and there are some key differences here. And I'm going to kind of go over them really quick with you guys, and you can kind of hopefully figure out what you want to go with. First and foremost, there's a $300 difference between the two models. The Pixel 6 Pro is $899 before taxes. So you're looking at $900 after taxes, and then the Pixel 6 is going to be $599. So you're looking at a little more than $600 after taxes. So there is a $300 difference. As far as the screen real estate, you're getting with the Pixel 6 Pro, I want to say it's like 0.4 inches more, if I remember correctly. And that's I could be off on that, but anyway, I'm pretty sure it's 0.4. If I remember correctly, you're looking at like 6.7 inches versus 6.3 inches. And if you're looking at the screens side by side, I've done some videos prior on YouTube showing when I was in Best Buy testing out the units a week ago. And I said, again, I spent a lot of time. I've been to Best Buy multiple times just testing out these phones. And one of the things that I noticed was on the Pixel 6 Pro, the screen, because it has a higher pixel density as far as the PPI versus on the Pixel 6, the images are more crisp and they do look better when it comes to the sharpness of the overall photo. However, I did notice on the Pixel 6, looking at the wallpapers, specifically wallpapers that had blues and reds, the blues and reds actually looked a little bit more punchy, if that makes sense. It was almost as if they had a little bit more contrast, and a little bit more just colors to them. However, on the Pixel 6 Pro, the blacks looked like super black, and on the Pixel 6, it almost had a little bit of a slight gray shift to it. Now, this is just my personal experience from the two units that I did test out, but overall, both screens looked amazing. Obviously, you're going to notice the difference between the Pixel 6 Pro as well as the Pixel 6 because of the fact that the refresh rate is different. So if you're actually playing with them side by side, you will notice a difference between the Pixel 6, which has a 90 hertz refresh rate, versus the Pixel 6 Pro, which has a 120 hertz. It's an LPTEO screen, and it can go down to 60 hertz if need be. But the screen definitely has darker blacks on the Pixel 6 Pro. So that's something that I did like. And again, the overall pictures are a little bit more crisp looking as far as the wallpaper, the icons, and so forth. So that's something I noticed. Going into the haptic feedback, both of them felt relatively the same with the haptic feedback. Both have really good haptic feedback, so I was really impressed with the haptic feedback. As far as touch responsiveness, the Pixel 6 Pro as well as Pixel 6 seemed like they were spot on. And years prior, I did notice a difference, like the Pixel 4 versus the Pixel 4 XL, as well as the 3 and 3 XL. I always noticed a little bit of a difference between the touch responsiveness as well as the haptic feedback. So I'm really happy that they seem to make sure everything was pretty much on par with each other this year. So that aside, I'm going to go into the cameras a little bit because that I definitely tested more extensively than anything else. The Pixel 6 and Pixel 6 Pro, as far as the front face cameras are concerned, the 6 has a 8 megapixel selfie shooter, and the 6 Pro has an 11 megapixel selfie shooter. One of the things that you're going to notice as far as that is different, obviously between the two, is that the Pixel 6 Pro actually can do 4K at 60 frames per second, versus the Pixel 6 cannot do that. You can do 1080p at 60 frames per second, but that's what you're capped at. And I did notice a huge difference when I was using the front-facing camera on the Pixel 6 Pro versus the Pixel 6. It was definitely sharper. It definitely did a better job of overall image quality. And then also I noticed that there was more of a saturated look when it came to my face. I had more accurate colors to my face overall. And in the Pixel 6, I looked a little bit more less lifelike, if that makes sense. There's just a little bit less tone to my skin, a little bit less color to my skin. Now that could be due to the fact that the software is different, but I really think it's due to the sensor. Not 100% positive, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. So I was really impressed with the Pixel 6 Pro's front-facing camera. It also seemed to, when I was doing video recording, the video recording was doing a little bit better. I noticed a little bit of a stutter, and that might have to do with software updates, because I did not look at the software build on the 6 Pro versus the 6. So they might have had different software updates for the phones. So that might have had something to do with it as well. But overall, the Pixel 6 Pro just did a better job in general on the front face camera. Now, as far as the rear facing camera, everything is the same with the exception of the sensor that does the telephoto. So you've got the telephoto on the 6 Pro versus the Pixel 6. You do not have that telephoto. You just have your standard wide angle, and then you've got your ultra wide. So when it came to zooming, obviously the Pixel 6 Pro did a much better job. If you're looking at things 3 to 6 feet away, they pretty much were on par with each other. Did not notice any difference. At least that was discernible in my personal opinion. And so that was good to see. I think honestly, if you're on a budget, personally, I probably would go with the Pixel 6 versus the 6 Pro. You're losing out on a couple little things here and there. You've gotten more RAM with the Pixel 6 Pro versus the Pixel 6. But overall speed, everything felt pretty much exactly the same, with the exception of using the front-facing camera and doing the video on the 6 Pro. It did seem like it handled it a little bit better. And that might have to do with the RAM. I'm not 100% certain as far as the optimization is concerned. But overall, the 6 Pro, video-wise performed a little bit better for the front-facing camera. Now, on the rear-facing camera, different story. They actually handled on par with each other. They were literally just neck and neck with everything. So everything looked really good until you get up to the zoom. Once you go to the zooming capabilities, the 6 Pro definitely did a better job. I could tell when I was zooming in on everything, you just had a much more crisp or sharp overall picture. Saturation levels seem the same. Color levels seem the same from the rear-facing cameras. And that's because they're using the main, for recording on videos on the back, they're actually using the standard wide-angle lens until you start zooming, and then the telephoto kicks in on the Pixel 6 Pro. So that said, again, the Pixel 6 Pro, in my opinion, is a little bit better for zooming capabilities. But overall, with budget-minded individuals, the 6 is just as good, other than some of those caveats that I've already talked about prior from the front-facing camera on the 6 Pro versus the 6, and then having more RAM on the 6 Pro. But side by side, when you're playing with the two phones and you're looking through just apps and scrolling and whatnot, almost everything seems the same, except for the fact that you can tell a little bit of a difference on the 6 Pro because of that 120 hertz refresh rate. It is a little bit more smooth, just has a kind of buttery smooth feeling, and it is noticeable, definitely. Now, if you're coming from like a 60 hertz phone, either phone is going to be great. You're going to notice a difference coming from a 60 hertz phone, so it's an upgrade either way. But I would say overall, everything was pretty good on both phones. The speaker quality was something that I've always enjoyed on Pixels, specifically for the Pixels that had the front-facing or front-firing speakers. They're not doing that anymore, but the sound quality is still really great. I still think the Pixel 4 had the best sound quality out of all the Pixels that I've tested, but that's just my personal opinion. And again, that was probably because of the front-facing speakers going directly towards me versus a down-firing that we have now on the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro, and then you have your front-facing for the top. So overall, sound was fine. It just wasn't as loud as what I'm used to on even actually a Pixel 3 and 3 XL. Seemed a little bit louder, but the sound quality overall sounds more natural, less tinny, and it just had a better overall tone to it versus some of the prior Pixels. So that aside, everything else that I tested as far as just going through applications, opening up the cameras and filming and taking videos and taking photos and closing applications and going into things like Instagram, Facebook, whatever, web browsing, I did notice. Now there's a big caveat here, because there is a possibility that they were getting warm, because while I was testing them, they were actually plugged up and charging. But I did notice that both of the units seemed a little warm while I was using them. And this is something that I've always had an issue with when it comes to the Pixels as a whole. They always tend to overheat. Specifically if you're outside and you're taking photos, which you'll see like on the Pixel 4 XL actually, if it gets too hot, some of the camera capabilities are actually taken away. So like the slider bars for adjusting like your high dynamic range or your exposure, when it gets too hot, those go away. You can't do it anymore. And then also there is definitely shutter lag. So it takes a minute not a minute, but it takes a little bit longer to take an actual photo and then process. I didn't notice that on these units yet, but I did notice that they were getting pretty warm while I was using them. Again, big caveat here, they were charging. So there is a possibility that that is only because they were charging. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time, specifically with the 6 Pro that I have on hand now, take a lot of photos, take a lot of videos, and while it's not charging, and I'm going to see if it has the same problem. I'm hoping it doesn't, but you never know. This is the first time that they're using, their own in-house sensor with a tensor chip. So, they're definitely open to having issues specifically this early on. But a lot of that can be fixed with software updates as well. So I'm hoping, if this is an issue, it can be alleviated through a software update. Overall, other than that, again, if you're a budget-minded individual, I would go with a Pixel 6 just because you're saving $300. But if you are looking for that 120 hertz refresh rate screen and you are a pixel peeper, as far as you literally look for imperfections in pixels, the 6 Pro is better, has a higher PPI. It's got the 120 hertz refresh rate. It's got 12 gigs of RAM. You've got that telephoto lens on the rear, and then you also have the 11 megapixel camera on the front, so it can record in 4K. So those are the things that if you're really wanting the best of the best as far as with the Pixel line, obviously the Pro series is going to be for you. But if you're budget minded, you don't mind missing out on a couple little things like that, you're not too terribly worried about the front facing camera, which still does a great job taking photos as well as video, then I would save the $300 and go with the Pixel 6. So that's the real world comparison that I have so far, and review, not from somebody who's sponsored, not from somebody who's a household name like MKBHD or Aaron from Mr. Who's the Boss, or some of these other guys, but just an average Joe. And that's pretty much it. And I'm going to continue, like I said, working on the Pixel 6 Pro. And once I have a better feel with going through the videos and the photos and whatnot, and I'm going to be doing this outside as well, in direct sunlight, I'm going to see if we're still having that issue with the phones getting warm. And if they are, then I'm going to post an update on that as well. So everyone, appreciate it. And hopefully this gets out to people and it will help some individuals figure out what they want to choose overall if they end up going with the Pixel 6 Pro. Thanks a lot.